Okay, everyone, places, and action.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You talking to me?
Here, looks like you boys have seen a lot of action.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Why so serious?
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
This is the Cinema Plus podcast, brought to you by More Movies.
Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of the Cinema Plus podcast, brought to you by moremovies.co.uk. I'm Greg Fisher, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague Dave Roberts, as we use this first series to take a look and discuss some of our favourite films of all time. In this episode, I have selected Midnight Run, an action comedy released in 1988, directed by Martin Brest of Beverly Hills Cop fame, and starring Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin, who play two unlikely travel companions who are being simultaneously pursued by the police, the FBI, bounty hunters, and the Vegas Mafia. This was one of De Niro's first forays into lighter material, having previously only worked on films with much weightier content. He plays Jack Walsh, a former cop who has become a bounty hunter and is hired by a bail bond company based in Los Angeles. They have a client who has skipped bail and is on the run. The client, played by Grodin, has ripped off the mob for over $15 million and given the money away to charity. Suffice to say, he's a wanted man, and it's up to De Niro to bring him in before the FBI can get their hands on him as a witness, or the Mafia just rub him out. Midnight Run is a fun road movie, pairing two brilliant actors who stem from very different branches of the tree. Before we get into it, here's De Niro in an excerpt from an interview, where he talks about working on the film.
The real appeal of the story is the relationship between the characters. He sort of looks down on it, looks down on his own profession in a way, and does it because he has to. And this, what he's doing now, getting character Chuck Grodin is playing, getting his character back is like he's hitting the jackpot. He's going to make a big score, and then he's going to get out of this business and settle down. Not really settle down, but just sort of live in paradise somewhere. And my feeling is if you're going to work on something that hard, you better work on something that you like. Yes! And you get to know people, you get to see other sides of them, and life is not so simple. And that's kind of what the story is, too. These guys who are sort of forced into a situation, being next to each other and having to take the good with the bad. It was like an adventure in terms of going to these different locations. I enjoy that. It's fun. It's a lot of hard work. It's all those things,
So yeah, Midnight Run, absolutely brilliant film. I've always loved it. I watched it probably when I was about 10, 11 years old. It was out in 1988, so I would have been 10 years old when it came out. Probably seen it maybe 12 months, 18 months down the line on video rental. Always loved Robert De Niro, but really this really gave me a great appreciation for Charles Grodin. There's many other great performers in it, as I'm sure we'll go into throughout the course of this, but it's sort of a film that I really appreciated during the teenage years as well. It was one I'd always share with friends, say, hey, have you seen Midnight Run? I think I bought it on video eventually when it came out, and I'd always force it upon people and say, look, watch this film, it's great, because it's such a great road movie, such a great buddy movie. So in terms of us doing our favourite film selections, this had to be on my list. And when I asked you if you'd seen it, you said no. I was elated, really, because I thought, great, I think he's going to enjoy this. Maybe he didn't, but let's find out.
So I thought it was great. I thought it was really good, very enjoyable. It's strange that I've not come across it before, really, because this is the kind of thing I would have loved growing up. I can just imagine the same thing. If I was a teenager, this would have been absolutely awesome. So perhaps missed out a little bit there in terms of this is a really great film for teenagers, I think, in terms of it would become one of their favourites. But yeah, great film, really funny, loads of great action packed throughout. Quite clever and quite emotional at times as well, I think. And just one of those really great classic American buddy cop movies of the 80s, that we had many of. But, I didn't even know that Robert De Niro had done such a film, really,
Well, this was a real departure for De Niro, because up until this point, throughout the 70s and the early 80s, he'd done some really major, serious work, all the Scorsese pictures, which culminated in Raging Bull, really, he did the Once Upon a Time in America. He did all sorts of really quite heavy work. He was in Godfather 2, of course. This was the first time he kind of dipped his toes into almost mainstream cinema, because it's Martin Brest. He didn't do a hell of a lot of movies, but he did the ones he did well. You have A Scent of a Woman, and I think he did Meet Joe Black as well years later as well. He hasn't got a massive back catalogue, but he had his impact at that time. And for me, having De Niro in that role, that elevates it as well. Because I think, I'm not sure, but I think Martin Brest might have done Beverly Hills Cop as well, because there is elements of Beverly Hills Cop in there. I mean, you've got Marvin, John Ashton, who's also features in Beverly Hills Cop.
He directed Beverly Hills Cop just before this.
There we go.
There we go.
But you're absolutely right. It is that sort of main staple American buddy cop movie, a road movie. But what a great pairing! You can almost compare it as well in a way to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, because there is that element of it. They're on they're in a car, they're on a bus. Are they on a train at some point? And then they're on a,
and the plane,
almost on the plane at that point, yeah. But there's an element of that mixed up with the more sort of action side of Beverly Hills Cop sort of thing, because you got quite a lot of action going on in there, and it is quite a well-rounded film, like you said. It's funny, but it's also emotional. And some of those scenes you're laughing out loud and you're having a great time, and in others it is quite emotional. That he knows how to sort of do that, I think, Martin Brest, because he did that well with Scent of a Woman as well, with Al Pacino, because there was loads of that was really funny, but other moments that really were quite serious. And
It's interesting knowing now that he's Beverly Hills Cop, because that's the kind of the feel I got from the film. I was like, this is kind of like that. And it's great because you're right, I was thinking there's obviously a lot of kind of parallels there with Planes, Trains and Automobiles, which is to me one of the funniest films ever. But it's interesting, it's a little bit different because it's funny, but it's a drama, and that really is De Niro. Because although De Niro in more recent years has done the comedy stuff in his later twilight of his career, that's more the goofball comedy, I always feel. This is kind of him doing comedy and being lighthearted, but it's got that grit that he had in that early work, and it's like in between. And I think it comes across really, really well. And you say Charles Grodin playing a brilliant part as that kind of buddy.
That's where the comedy's at for me. Charles Grodin, the whole way, his deadpan style, his whole the way he sort of needles away at him, like the scene he's asking him to put the cigarette out. When you put the cigarette out, when you put it out,
just put it out, buddy.
Yeah, it's like really,
it's passive smoking,
absolutely in Robert De Niro's character off, Jack Walsh off, and it's just such a brilliant chalk and cheese kind of a story, like we said, a buddy movie where they hate each other's guts, but by the end, they've gone through so much together. They've got like with Planes, Trains and Automobiles, they've got an actual connection with one another. But De Niro, funnily enough, after doing that body of serious work, he did an interview a few years after he'd done this, maybe in the 90s somewhere, and they asked him, one of those stock questions, what's been your favourite experience on a film set so far? And I think he maybe cited Robin Williams, working with him on what's the film they did together, Awakenings, but that's quite a serious movie. But he did say he had a great time working with him, but he pointed out that the best time he'd ever had was working with Charles Grodin on Midnight Run, So a lot of that stuff where he's laughing on the bus and stuff, and you can see him saying, "No, I've never known a ball busted like you in my life," and he's laughing to himself. He's probably, that's just genuine.
I can see it. I can absolutely see it. I think you can see that the whole thing seems fun. Like the whole cast is having fun doing this.
God, yeah.
And it is just littered with stuff. And what I really liked about it as well is the whole film was breathing Americana.
Yeah.
The cars, the places they were going, the characters, it was just pure
the music, that kind of really cheesy,
yeah.
bluesy guitar. You got slide and all this kind of like blues licks going on in the background. Really quite cheesy 80s soundtrack, but it works so well with this format.
Oh, yeah. These are the best kind of films, really. That period of those kind of over-the-top films from the 80s for me are just, you can go back and keep on watching them. It was interesting because I think at the beginning of the film I was sitting there going, in a way it looked a bit cheap. I was like, bit of a low-budget thing going on here. But as soon as it gets going and you realise how many fucking cop cars they must have brought in from around the place. There was about 100 of them on the screen.
It does get a bit Blues Brothers at some point.
It gets silly, yeah. And certainly
you'd need that, though, because
around.
Obviously the whole story is this. Charles Grodin plays the Duke, Jonathan Mardukas, that has ripped off the mob for millions and millions of dollars and then given it to charity. So he's wanted by the mob. The FBI want him because he's got to turn state's witness. He skipped his bail bond, so Robert De Niro's character Jack gets hired to be his bounty hunter, really, and bring him in to the bail bondsman. And there we have our setup. Now the spanner in the works, of course, is Marvin, as we've mentioned, John Ashton, who plays an absolutely brilliant part in this. Oh,
he's brilliant. Absolute goofball, but so lovable for his idiocy throughout.
I mean, when you say Americana, that character anyway, Marvin oozes that, doesn't he? He's got the cowboy boots. That denim jeans.
The cap and the shirt, yeah.
Bit of an attitude.
Just totally turns up. I'm the motherfucker. Why? Only 25 grand, and that's it. He's well endowed to the story, and the perfect kind of third wheel to that kind of relationship.
He's almost like the spanner in the works. He's the perfect one that turns up when you least expect it and messes the scenario up. But that keeps it fun. It keeps you guessing. Even when he turns up at the airport at the end, and they're really building the tension there. It's hilarious to just see him striding along, and you know by then, oh God, what's Marvin going to do? He's going to ruin the whole thing.
He's going to fuck it all up. That's what he's going to do.
The other performance there, of course, is Joe Pantoliano, the guy who plays Eddie Moscone, the bail bondsman. Jack, you got good news for me, Jack. That guy. He was in The Goonies. He was in The Matrix. He plays Cypher in The Matrix. Remember that? Ignorance is bliss, that guy. He's a great actor, really good in that 80s stuff, really sort of fast-talking Italian type. And I love him in this as that really, highly strung, had too many coffees, always stressed, always at work, and just on the phone, spends half his life on the phone yakking at people. He's just perfect for it. And like you mentioned when we were watching it as well, the braces, the clothes, the 80s clothes going on.
It was so stuck in that period, but so fun for it. Just like, probably even shit clothes then, to be honest. The trousers were so high up the waist. I think it was
there's
comical,
an element of that, yeah. Also, we got the fantastic Dennis Farina, who plays Jimmy Serrano, the mob guy. Anybody who's seen things like Get Shorty or Snatch, the Guy Ritchie movie, will love Dennis Farina. He plays a brilliant mobster. Unfortunately, he's passed away now. He's no longer with us, but this, to me, is the first time I took notice of Dennis Farina. It's like he's quite a nasty guy, even though he's still got that sort of wise guy humour going on. But he plays a really good sort of evil mobster in that way. And again, going to the clothes, that sweater he wears in that one scene with the...
Oh, yeah, God, yeah.
That's...
it's the worst jumper I've ever seen. But, absolutely brilliant performance. He's got that villainous humour down to a T, and there's not many people who can.
Sydney, I'm going to stab you with a fucking pencil or something. He says to
that's it. That mobster swearing kind of humour-filled lacerations. It's really, really fun.
He's good at it.
But I mean, the other fantastic performances from Yaphet Kotto is. Alonzo Mosley,
brilliant. I'm Mosley.
What just fantastic, just the most ridiculously over the top FBI agent, but the faces he pulls sometimes.
Oh God, he's just like got a face of stone. It's his eyes say everything. He commands attention. He's got such screen presence. Absolutely fantastic actor, brilliant in this. Really gets that chance to shine in this because he does give an understated performance. Alonzo Mosley is a very cool, calm, collected, FBI guy, and that's why it's so funny when he gets to that point where he's really pissed off that Jack stole his identity, and everyone is saying, "Oh, this guy is called Mosley," and that's what makes it so funny because he's been so calm all the way. But yeah, that is a standout performance.
It is amazing with just the way, he can just walk into a room in the scene, and he's captured the imagination of the screen. It's magnetic, and that's rare, really, in performances. And
I think
really,
of that
really
shot.
Special.
That shot where in the diner towards the end, where Jack's sort of down on his luck, and he's sits in the diner and he's counting the change, and he looks to his left, and all the FBI guys are stood behind Mosley, and he's just perfect. He commands authority. He's a great performance there. What I was going to mention was Philip Baker Hall as well, who played Sidney, who's the kind of advisor to Jimmy Serrano.
Yeah, really small role, but
he was the king of the small roles, though.
Absolutely.
Obviously, he played the main part in Hard 8, which was Paul Thomas Anderson's first big one. But other than that, he only turned up in these small supporting roles. But he's so memorable. He's always so good in it.
He's got that face you really remember, isn't it? And he's just been in everything.
And that voice, he's got that really cool voice. And to be honest, I'd forgot he was in this. And then we watched it and I thought, yeah, Philip Baker Hall. Another dude, no longer with us. But yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate... Like I said, there's a lot of parallels here with Planes, Trains and Automobiles. That whole scamming him that he can't get on the plane. Like he's freaking out.
Oh, yeah.
It's so cool because when you first watch it, you think, oh, poor guy, he's got he's got some sort of aversion to flying on planes. He just can't handle it. And then, again, the payoff, an hour later when he's sitting in that old crop duster plane and it's about to take off and De Niro's chasing him. Oh, it's so funny. He gives him that look as if to say, what am I supposed to do? As only Charles Grodin can, but yeah, absolutely loved it.
It's interesting just reading there that apparently the original suggestion for the film was to pair De Niro with Robin Williams, which would have been
there we go.
A very different film, I think.
I think so. I think as great as Robin Williams was, and as great as De Niro and Robin Williams were acting together, really, yeah, you could not replace Charles Grodin in that film. I was already a fan of De Niro, who wasn't in the 80s and 90s. It's like he was the main guy. It's like Robert De Niro's in it. Yeah, he's absolutely. But suddenly, who's this guy, Charles Grodin? This amazing master of the understated humour, and I just loved him. I never forgot him after that. Do you remember? Did you ever watch Beethoven? Came out after that.
Beethoven, yeah.
He's the guy. He's the dog. Has changed my life. He's like long-suffering owner of this unwieldy, out of control, massive Saint Bernard. But again, he just makes anything good. There's a lot more he's done that I haven't seen that I need to check out. There was a film I was looking at on Twitter the other day that there was a clip of it, and it was him and Sybil Shepherd. I'll find out afterwards what it was called, but it was from the 70s and it looked hilarious. Again, just Charles Grodin being his own unique brand of humour. Just really funny.
Yeah, he's one of them I haven't really known as well, but seeing him here, it's like I got to check more of his catalogue out, really, because it's a fantastic performance and there's real skill.
There's one for you. There's a factoid, though. We were talking about the blues guitar and everything as the soundtrack, all that incidental guitar music. Danny Elfman actually composed the score. Can you believe that?
Well, doesn't sound like him, I must say.
It's not his usual kind of stuff, is it? But it's not orchestral. No. See, it's electric guitar music. It suits the film, though. It is a dusty, kind of desert-y, like you said, Americana film. I don't think it would suit his usual kind of orchestral strings piece.
This must be pretty early on for Danny Elfman, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's pre-Simpsons. It's
the big
just
breaks
before.
Batman,
actually,
isn't it?
This is because that was only a year later.
Yeah.
So I think this must be his kind of his way in, one of his ways into the industry. I'd have to look that up, but interesting to know it's him because it is a good score. But it's like with Lethal Weapon, you had Eric Clapton was doing all that incidental guitar music, and I was kind of reminded of that with this. That was what they were going for, that kind of that vibe.
Yeah, I think a lot of those kind of 80s cop movies and TV shows, for that matter, went for that kind of that blues guitar kind of sound, didn't they? And it became kind of the go-to.
It was. I think it was a sign of the times. If you're thinking of sort of Budweiser commercials and late 80s America was on top of the world.
But it suited the Americana feel of the film, didn't it? I think that was the key, that you really with all the kind of the mix between the kind of desert vistas and the cafes by the side of the road and the grungy kind of American cities, it suited exactly what they were going for,
Oh yeah, I think anything else would have sounded incongruous. If he'd done the sort of big orchestral string piece, it just wouldn't have worked.
It'd be daft, yeah.
But yeah, what you said earlier about this is one that sort of slipped you by and it's possibly went under the radar there. I think it's that kind of film because, as I said, I used to introduce friends to it all the time. If I had a copy, I'd say, watch this, Midnight Run, really great film. And a lot of people didn't know it. And it's funny that it's possibly still the case because it's just one of those underrated, really underrated films in terms of people haven't even heard of it. But because it's on Netflix at the moment, in the UK anyway, I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but I've seen a new generation starting to watch it and enjoy it, and I thought there's the testament to a film, because it is a dated film as anything that's that old now. It's 32 years old. It's certainly, you can tell, but it still stands up as a great movie because it's a character piece. It's about all the characters and they all stand out in their roles. So almost a great ensemble cast, isn't it? Because look at that, we mentioned everyone: De Niro, Grodin, John Ashton, Yaphet Kotto, Joe Pantoliano. There's loads of them in there. Philip Baker Hall, Dennis Farina.
I think that's it. Yeah, it's great that this is the thing now that Netflix is putting these, the older catalogue films on there, and it is reaching new audiences. And it's interesting because, yes, it's an older film, and at the time it would have felt very modern and of the period. But now watching back, it's dated in one way, but then in another way, it's got a really nice vintage feel to it, and that's the enjoyable element.
It's a timeless story, isn't it?
That's it.
But it's a buddy movie, and the scene when he goes home, when he goes to see his ex-wife and his daughter's there. Funnily enough, that little section feels to me very much like, again, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, but it feels like a John Hughes movie, that bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a small little break in the movie that makes you really. It got me emotional, and it really works in that way. It was about family, isn't it? And
the way he's really, having an argument with his ex-wife, and as they've only been in each other's company a few minutes, and it's already flaring up, and he's screaming and shouting. He's obviously got a lot of anger about the fact that their marriage didn't work out. And then suddenly his daughter appears, and there's silence, and there's a good few beats of silence they leave it for there, and it really does impact you. And her performance is very good. The young girl as the daughter, Danielle Duclos, I think her name is, but she plays that perfect, sweet little, daughter role where she's trying to give him the pocket money she saved up and stuff, and just that whole section, it feels like it was just John Hughes directed just that little bit, and then we go back into the Martin Brest action comedy afterwards. But it certainly does work as an emotional piece.
Although I think, in a way, there's some dramatic beats throughout which are very kind of John Hughes kind of, and a lot of those other kind of 80s kind of drama movies. There's a lot of those themes in there, because I always think a lot of those kind of contemporary 80s cinema, there's a lot of the family ties thing, the estranged kind of broken families, and people who were kind of and even in like coming of age films like Breakfast Club or something, people who were not on the same path but coming together,
absolutely,
and in the end becoming friends, and that resonates throughout the whole film. And I think that's a real trait of 80s cinema, really, that was a big thing back then, that those kind of dramatic feelings and emotions of different people, but in the end they find common ground. And there's beats of that throughout, when they're on the bus, when they're in the car, and of course at the very, very end, that really fit those moments where you do feel emotion, and it's the drama side of it rather than the comedy and the action, and it's gives it weight and presence and a grounding in character that you go, this is legitimate. It's not just surface.
Absolutely, and very well said. I think that is, again, not to want to repeat myself too much, but it is the reason that modern audiences are still resonating with it, and maybe people of my generation are showing their kids it and saying, have you Midnight Run, I haven't seen that for years, throw that on, that's good. And they're rewatching it and finding out, actually it still is good. It has, because you can watch some stuff from back in the day and you haven't seen it for years, and you think, oh god, that's really not aged very well at all. For example, something like Braveheart. I remember watching Braveheart. I went to the cinema to see it when it came out, and like everybody else, thought it was the greatest film ever made when we saw it then in our youthful naivety. But watched it, 20 years later, and thought, God, this is terrible. It's like really cheap, and awful Scottish accent.
I think what you find with them, though, is usually, apart from there is exceptions to the rule, but I think usually it's the bigger budget kind of blockbuster films that end up aging badly.
I think you're absolutely right.
And the stuff that tries to stay contemporary and not mess around too much generally ages quite nicely.
Like this.
And I think that's it, and that's the thing I think that makes it work. All these years later,
I think all three of those notable Martin Brest films, one of it being Midnight Run, then we say Beverly Hills Cop and Scent of a Woman, they are all films of their time, but they all fit the criteria that you've just gone over, really. They're still enjoyable now. They haven't dated that much that we can't still get something from them. And I really love that point you made about the emphasis on relationships succeeding despite people's differences. Because that's exactly what Planes, Trains and Automobiles is about. You got the highfalutin business city guy, city business guy in Steve Martin, and the low back street kind of shower curtain salesman in John Candy. Couldn't be more polar opposites.
Worlds apart.
Yeah, but by the end, they're like brothers. There's a real genuine love there, and I think it's worth kind of talking about the ending of midnight run. Obviously, if you listen to any of our podcasts and about the films we're talking about, you know, if you haven't seen these films, there is going to be spoilers in here. And if you have, well, there you go, you don't mind. But what I was going to say was the ending. Again, it's got elements of John Hughes and stuff, but it's such a good ending because you've been through so much already. All that kerfuffle in the airport with Serrano's got the tapes, all of that. You've been through so much, you're like, oh, and then you're thinking, oh yeah, he's still got to deliver the Duke to the bail bondsman, and then he lets him go out of the blue, and you think, wow. And then they have that really quite meaningful moment between them.
It's interesting because I think early on in the film you kind of guess at some point he's gonna let him go. It's a kind of a guess you have, but near the end you're kind of thinking, is he? You know, because they got on and stuff, but he needs this money. You know,
Yeah.
So how are they going to go with it? And it's still pushing all the way to that very, very last moment before, and then as he's getting off the plane, and I loved the look on De Niro's face because he had the red eyes as if he'd just been crying and he'd wiped it away, and it kind of felt how I think I felt. You know, you kind of like you felt like you'd gone on this journey with them.
Yeah.
And at that point, you kind of like a mix of tired, emotion and all this kind of going on, which is what he must be feeling, and he's showing you that.
Yeah.
And then just that lovely moment of "fuck you, motherfucker," I'm letting this guy go, and it does kind of go ooh, and it is a lovely way to end the film. That the kind of feel good moment, but it's done so nicely and eloquently, and doesn't feel forced or cheesy. It's just a nice.
That's a great point. It doesn't feel cheesy, although in a sense it kind of is. But it's in a way it's like everybody likes a little bit of cheese, you know,
just a little bit of feta on there,
just a little slice of cheddar right in the middle. That'll be fine. and what I mean, my point being that when he turns round to get one more look at him and he's gone.
Yeah,
that is in a sense it's a cheesy moment, but it really, really works. It's in a sense it's a hair standing up on your arms kind of feeling from it.
It's a goosebumps moment,
ghostly
isn't it?
Sort of moment. It's really nice because also it also gives you the impression he could have done that all along. In a way, he could have given that quick. He could have could have just give him the slip. So he's kind of like a guardian angel in a way, isn't he? And when De Niro's character is ready to graduate on into the metamorphosis, into the next phase of life, his guardian angel disappears,
It's the end of the hero's journey.
Yeah, you could view it that way. Or at least the end of that chapter.
It's a lovely moment, really, because it kind of also... I think that represents kind of that very emphasis I was talking about earlier about people from different backgrounds becoming friends, and even friends and people and they're there for the journey, and then the next minute they're gone. And that's it, and they'll never see each other again. But they've got that memory, that they've been through that journey together, and I think that's the nice kind of ending metaphor of him going off into the
absolutely and
twilight.
Made all the more prescient by the fact that they've just landed in Los Angeles, which is obviously the city of angels. So that kind of backs up our point as well of the Duke being this kind of.
And the Duke, what a name.
Oh, yeah. Well, his name's
love that fact.
Mardukas, Jonathan Mardukas, so the nickname the Duke. My favourite scene is when they go into the old dusty little town bar and they're going to basically rob them, but they pose in as FBI agents once again. But this time Grodin takes the lead and he gets the guy to get all the $20 bills out, and he's making De Niro test them, Are you doing the litmus test?
You're doing the litmus test?
You're doing the litmus configuration. But I love that scene. It's so funny. Because he's been in handcuffs all the way through the film and has been the convict, so to speak, or the criminal. And then suddenly his character steps into the shoes of being the FBI guy, questioning everyone. What's your name? And
it's nice to have that role reversal.
It just shows, again, it's that building it up just so you can play with the preconceptions, turn them on their head all of a sudden. And I think it's a film that does that really well all the way through. It keeps you not so much keeps you guessing, but it keeps surprising you. A pleasant surprise.
It does. Because there's so many set pieces in it, that and they all work so well. And there's so many characters involved. The different, you've got the FBI, you've got the police departments, the multiple police departments. You've got the Bond agents who hired him in the first place. You've got the other agent on the lookout.
You've got two gangster henchmen. Those two guys.
The two gangster henchmen. You've got the actual bad guys who own the corporation. There's them other guys that were hired to shoot them when they got off the bus early on in the film.
Yeah.
There's like so many different factions going on that it does keep surprising you, because they can play with all these different things happening, because everybody seems out to get them,
Yeah. Keep on running. It's one of those kind of films, everybody's out after them and they just got to keep going.
And what I particularly love, and it's something I love of that 80s and 90s cinema, which I don't think is done, one, not done much today, and two, when it is done, it's not done that well. And it's the car chase sequence.
Oh, yeah.
Because all those old films, and in this is a great one as well, they just get 50 cars and have a mass-off, ridiculous, over-the-top chase, cars flying everywhere, hidden ramps, the whole shebang. And it looks great, and it's all real, and you're just like, this is so much fun.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's all, CGI'd and taped up, and there isn't 50 cars, there's like 5 of them, and it doesn't feel as fun.
I think cinema has just changed so much in terms of this kind of cinema, mainstream cinema, really. Not big budget releases, but certainly would have had a theatrical release, got major starring, Robert De Niro starring in it, and, would have had some time in the theatre there. And this kind of filmmaking seems to have, just died off. I mean, you couldn't make it now because independent films wouldn't quite have the budget you'd need, because you have got in this, like you said, 50, 60 cars crashing and chasing. You've got the helicopter scene, which was, remind me of something like the A-Team, where the helicopter's chasing them down the road and the guy on the machine gun's like trying to, blow the car up and stuff. But that would all cost a lot of money that an independent film wouldn't be able to do. But they just wouldn't make it that way anymore. Like you said, it'd be CGI. It'd be a hell of a younger cast as well. Those kind of stars, like talk about John Ashton and Dennis Farina, and everybody in films now has got to look, be 25 or under, have a perfect body, and they just don't have the same characteristics. And
I think there's a lot in there that's kind of, and it's a shame because people do like these films, and it always baffles why they don't make these things. We know some reasons. They keep on making remakes and sequels and stuff like that, but yeah, it's an expensive film, $35 million, so clearly it's not going to be an independent film. It would have to be a Hollywood film.
Yeah.
But even if they were to make a film even close to this in terms of a buddy film with lots of stuff, I mean, it would be just that. They'd go, we'll save money and do CGI and it's safe, and all that stuff would be pulled out, and it would probably younger cast and stuff like that.
The last one I remember seeing that was close to anything like a buddy film like this was Due Date, and that's probably at least 10 years old now. At least I don't know what the date was on it, but I mean, there may
be crap.
Well, I thought it was a poor man's Planes, Trains and Automobiles.
Yeah.
And
it's not as much fun.
I like Robert Downey Jr. and I like Zach Galifianakis, but yeah, it's not as much fun. You've already been there. There was nothing really new to it, but I don't know. Was it done so much? Was it done to death that's why they don't make these sort of things anymore? I don't know. But like you said, people are still resonating with it. It's still on Netflix. It's still still out there and doing well because someone like De Niro is attached to it. I think if it had lesser stars, maybe even just didn't have De Niro in it and you just cast someone more forgettable from around that time, maybe it wouldn't have had same longevity, you know. Maybe it would be forgotten by now, but
I think it might have been, you know, it might still have been a good film if it was a good enough actor. But maybe, in terms of being a memorable film and being picked up by people and even doing well at the box office, I think that's a lot to do with De Niro.
You can tell he had a lot of fun making it. It was less pressure. He didn't have to put on 16 stone or lose 16 stone or become, you know, anything extreme on his method kind of style of acting. He was able to just star in something that was quite light-hearted and quite a lot of fun, and probably ended up having much better time on it than he'd imagined. As I say, he said how much he enjoyed working with Charles Grodin, but who wouldn't?
I think it's one of them, isn't it? That I think if you were asked what kind of film do you want to make, it's like this is the kind of film you'd want to make because it's so much fun. There's all the action and stunts and funny dialogue going on, and you're going to hang around with people for the whole shoot. Yeah, why not? It's far more fun than, okay, there may be artistic merit in doing something like Taxi Driver, and you know, it's a great performance, but it must be emotionally and physically a struggle to do because it's a very similar performance.
Zone. Yeah, you got to stay in that zone. See. Whereas with this, you could be a little bit more loose. You could have more fun. But a memorable film. I mean, so there we go. Then what we usually ask one another: what would you give it out of 10?
I think for me, it's a 7.
That's okay. That's pretty good. I think from you,
it's a solid 7.
That's a decent score coming from you. I gave it a 9, but again, probably a point or so there of nostalgia. Because I grew up with it, and you know, I've probably seen this film 20 times. No joke.
I think there's an element that I think I've clearly missed out on having it at a younger age. I think it would have had a kind of good memory.
Here's a
little
little story to go with it for you. A friend of mine from school, my friend Mark, the pair of us, after seeing this film and just really loving the Robert De Niro character, thinking he was like the coolest guy ever when we were like 15, we went out and bought a packet of Marlboro cigarettes and just started smoking because of this film. You know, that it's almost like that whole I'm going to have my cigarettes, you have whatever you're going to have, I'm going to have this. That whole thing got us, you know. Maybe we didn't need much of an excuse, and that was just the catalyst that got us going. But straight away afterwards, you know,
it does seem like a big advert for smoking at times. I mean, he is constantly puffing away.
I mean, it is, and it also has that anti-smoking element with Charles Grodin pointing out all the reasons not to smoke. So it's kind of, I suppose, it was at the start of all that kind of culture of saying, hey, some of this stuff is bad for us, you know. Smoking is bad for us, fatty foods are bad for us, a lot of sugar is bad for us. This was the start of that kind of time, but that's didn't stop us going down to the shop and, you know.
I think you see that dynamic in the characters as well, because I think you can see him, De Niro's character, as the kind of, he's the smoker, he's the drinker, he's going to have a bacon sandwich, he's the kind of old school, I'm a man, I've always done this. And more Grodin's character is the, don't smoke, I'm going to have a salad, we do things differently now.
Progressive kind of guy,
Yeah.
Don't smoke, we're going to have a salad, and then we're going to rip off the mob for $3 million and give it
That's right.
Oh, no, it's a $15 million, sorry. Did I say 3? I meant 15.
Why not just make it 20?
Yeah. But, I'm really glad you watched it as well. I was hoping you were going to enjoy it. And, definitely.
It's just made me want to go and get a black leather jacket, to be honest.
Isn't it brown? Brown leather jacket? I love that moment when he steals his badge for the first time and he walks off up the sidewalk, as they say, And he turns around and he does that quick pose with it, like
Yes.
FBI. And he just, that's the genius of De Niro, just doing a quick improvisation. But that's the kind of thing that shows what a good time he was having making it. So really good. Check it out if you haven't seen it on Netflix. Hopefully everything we said won't have spoiled it, because it'll just make you want to go and see it. But yeah, that's our... Any final thoughts from you, Dave, on Midnight Run?
Yeah, well, just that's it. It's a great film. I highly recommend going and watching it. It's a great Sunday afternoon film, I think. If you want to chill out with some friends on a Sunday afternoon with a couple of beers, this is the kind of film it's one of them. It's funny, it's emotional, it's got the action you want in it. Great performances. What more could you ask for?
It's a full package. Okay, well, this has been Greg Fisher with my esteemed colleague, Mr. David Roberts.
That's right.
And that's a wrap on this episode for Cinema Plus. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Cinema Plus podcast. Thanks very much for listening, and we hope that you can join us next time, when we will be discussing another of our all-time favourite movies. Until then, take a look at our film reviews or articles at moremovies.co.uk, and come and say hello on Twitter at moremovies4. This is Greg Fisher signing off, and we'll catch you next time.